Mm.
And there they are. All right, we'll give it a few seconds and then rock and roll. And hello all, Dr. Bruce here, welcoming you to another episode of the Spiritual Hitchhiker's Practical Guide to the Afterlife and Beyond. Now, our topic today is grief. For many, grief marks the first time in a person's life when emotions become uncontrollable, forcing them to confront raw, unfiltered feelings. It's the pinnacle of human experience, and it can be a powerful catalyst for growth, healing, natural empathy. Joining me today in our discussion is a very special guest, my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Toni Reilly, Australia's premier past life regression specialist with a well over 20 years experience in the field, who was also my first guest on the Spiritual Hitchhikers show about a year ago. She's joining me from Brisbane, Australia. Some of you may remember Toni from a show she and I first did about 5 years ago, and we revived it also a couple of years ago. Toni is a master at introducing perspectives about certain topics that challenge widespread beliefs and force us to think outside of the proverbial box. I know she won't disappoint us today as she reveals, among other things, how embracing grief can foster profound self-awareness, leading to a deeper connection with oneself and with others. So welcome, Dr. Toni. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hello, Dr. Bruce. Thank you for having me. I know that I appear smiley around a topic that's quite devastating when people are going through it, but I'm quite excited to talk about it from, I guess, a positive perspective today. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, you do have a positive perspective about it, and you also have an objective view of grief. Can you talk about that, address that objective view?
Look, the objective view is it has arrived through all of these nearly 20 years of working with clients, also my own experiences of grief, which is probably really the pinnacle for me of attaining this objective perspective on it. I think you do work also with past lives, and what you also see when you're working with people in a past life as therapy, the most important part of that therapeutic session is the death scene.
Mm.
So, and what we know when people arrive at the death scene, for most, if not almost 100%, it is a, a welcomed experience, or they're aware that they're going home and that they're away from the harshness of life and what life's been like, whether it's been amazing or not within this body. So part of that reason, no matter how traumatized they were, or even sometimes in grief, that you come to understand that there is an objectivity to it. And more so, life, from my view, is it has three important pinnacles, and it's birth, grief, and death. Those are the defining moments in the cycle of life. So I think being objective about something that has been spoken to us, usually through religion, to judge certain ways of dying or judge how we grieve. We shouldn't be emotional. We should show up. We've got to go to work. All of these things, you come to realize that there's such a lot to it, and that nobody actually gets to control it. Therefore, when I see it happening, or when it happened to me, can be very objective about it and
It's
not judging.
interesting that you bring up past life regression, and as we take them to the death, and there very often is a grief followed by relief, as I'm sure you'd
Yeah,
agree.
yeah,
The grief of
absolutely.
going through the death scene, however they happen, but then there's always a relief after that. So what, this is, I may say like a basic question, but what causes grief?
Oh, grief is caused by generally the loss of something. Now, it's not just through the death of somebody. It can be caused through the loss of something which causes a change in one's circumstances or comfort zone. So I think a lot of people associate grief with death or dying, but it certainly can be set off by other things as well. And for some people, they experience a lot of death around them, but their grieving process might be set off by something different.
It can also be caused by a loss of a relationship, or the death, and not physical death, but the death of a relationship, or of a job too, of a
Exactly.
career.
So many things, Dr. Bruce. And I think probably one of the big things would be the breakdown of a relationship. So separation or divorce, massive, can cause massive grief for both parties, or one or the other. It's a huge deal. It's a huge thing to happen. And again, not for everybody, but definitely that's a big cause of the grieving process. Also, you said after that, did you say losing your job, changes in the job? I think
Changing career situations.
especially when sometimes when people come to retire, they have this build up. It's going to be great. When I retire, I'm doing this. When I get to there, I'm going to do that. It's going to be good. It's going to be different. But what can happen for some people is their identity is so wound up in
Sure.
their job and what they do or their career, that when it comes to not having that anymore, it can put them in a deep sense of grief or a deep grieving experience. So that's only two things, but there are so many more. You know, for some people, it can be the loss of a pet, and I think it's very valid because a lot of people have their pet every single day. So when they lose their pet or the pet goes home, it's a big deal for them. And it can be very unexpected, I think, for a lot of people, the grieving process. I don't think anyone can perceive how gutting it is until you're in it. And I feel like that is why also before the grieving process, before we've experienced it ourselves, we can be intolerant of it. I know that I used to hear people saying things like, and maybe I've even said it myself when I was young, it's like, come on, just get over it. But you can't just get over it. It's not, it's just not that easy. And it's meant to be something very important for us as an individual to experience in life.
You mentioned grieving the loss of a pet. Some people grieve a pet more than they do a human being.
They do.
Um,
They
they
do.
really do. And that's where people can be so unempathetic toward other people. When the pet, oh, come on, it's
Yeah.
just a pet. It's just a dog. It's just a cat. It's
Yeah.
not. It's part of the family.
No, that's right. And it is part of the family, certainly for a lot of people. And I guess it's not that different to having children or a child, because they're in your life every single day and they're dependent upon you to take care of them. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's a great loss. And of course, pets are, well, certainly dogs anyway, unconditional, and just they provide a comfort zone for us, our pets.
They do. They do with that. But death, yeah, and grief is ultimately most tied with death. So why do you think? Why are so people so afraid of death?
Oh, I think people are afraid of death because they conjure up a perspective, because they don't know how are they going to die, and what if they become ill, what if something even more hideous happens to them and someone does something to them that's unwelcome. So I think people are afraid of it for what could happen. They worry also, what will their family do without them? What, all of these day-to-day things that they interact with and feel responsible for are going to be challenged, or maybe they can't do them anymore. Also, I think probably this is one of the biggest things is religion told people they're going to hell if they haven't adhered to the rules. And there's a lot of fear in that, where people they don't know, is there a hell? Or for a lot of people, they probably believe there is one. There isn't. But that we're living it here, where we're working through emotions. That's what's the
True.
hardest. Yeah. But I think that those religious teachings were just so fear driven. And I think that's where a lot of the fear of death came from.
And
You
also fear of
know
the
what's
unknown. Wouldn't you say that?
interesting?
Wouldn't you say
Oh,
a fear of the
absolutely.
unknown?
Absolutely.
Is there
I
an
absolutely
afterlife?
would.
Do we, as you and I, we work in this particular field, but other people who don't, they may give them pause to think.
Yeah.
Is there an afterlife? Do we get to do this whole thing all over again? And
Yeah.
so that causes a results in a fear of death.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Mm.
there's also, again, this is not for everybody, but I think there's also a big grieving process for people who are told that their time is limited. So they're diagnosed with terminal illness or that type of thing. So there's a grieving process that can go with that. And do you know, for some people, they are at peace with it. So it's
Mm.
just not one and the same for everybody, and there's not one
No,
reaction
it is not.
that sets it off. Um, yeah, and I feel like people need some permission to grieve in their own way. And I think potentially, if I could give an example, potentially when someone's, let's say they've nursed their parent or their partner through an illness, and they've had a whole lot of time to grieve. So when it actually happens, they may be relieved. And yet
Mm.
it seems like maybe it's not kosher to say, I'm so relieved. But I would love to see it become okay to say, I'm relieved my mum has gone home, or they're in peace now. And some people do say it, but I think they're a little bit guarded about the expectations of should they be devastated and sad. But the reality
And
is they've
guilty,
most likely done their grieving
which
already.
which brings guilt about being relieved to certain people.
Right.
So there
Yeah,
is a
absolutely.
term that perhaps you can expound upon. What does it mean, the dark night of the soul?
The dark night of the soul, I assimilate with when we as an individual start to probably awaken. Maybe we do some self-development, or we have a near-death experience, or something that makes us look at ourselves and study ourselves deeply. And I feel like the dark night of the soul happens as a grieving process when you start to realize that how your life played out and how you felt about it, maybe felt a victim of certain aspects of it, and then you realize that you did it to yourself. And I mean that a lot of our emotional reactions are or were a result of our insecurities. But before we realize that or understand that, we feel a victim of potentially our partner, for example. Oh, they did this to me, or my mother-in-law did that, my father did this, whatever it might be. But when you realize that, oh, it was all about your own reaction, and you're really trying to find out who you are. So I see the dark night of the soul as really a coming to terms with your identity and your purpose in life, why you're really here.
Hmm.
I
But
think
talk to
I
us about
think part of that
suicide.
grieving process will have you feeling sorry for yourself. Like, oh my God. But yeah.
Talk to us about suicide. Is there a retribution for suicide in the afterlife?
Suicide's one of the things that's been in my realm on different levels since I first started out in this work. And the one thing that I can assure everybody is it is a way to die, a way to transition back home. There is no retribution on the other side. It's not a selfish thing to do. It's it's something that is that person's way out of the body and their way home. Of course, what happens when someone suicides is there's a lot of, potentially anyway, there's a lot of emotional baggage left behind or emotional turmoil caused for the people who are left behind. So I think with suicide, other forms of death as well, but with suicide, it can set off guilt for some of the people involved. Why didn't I take that phone call? Why didn't I see that coming? These kinds of things. Whereas um, there's really, we're all going on our day and time in the way that we have agreed before we're born. So, and suicide is no different. So, I think what I see sometimes is people who are left behind from suicide, whether they're the partner or a sibling or a child of, or whatever the dynamic is, it can be some people, just like all forms of grief, they take it really, some people take it really all knowing and from a higher perspective, and others are absolutely gutted. So with any form of loss, there's no right or wrong way to grieve or not to grieve.
And I think you and I are in agreement about this from other shows that we've done when we talk about retribution in the afterlife. Retribution for anything,
Yeah,
for any dastardly deed that might have been done.
yeah,
How can there be retribution? Who was the retribution against? It was the body that committed these deeds. The body
yeah,
committed suicide. The body committed suicide, not the soul.
yeah.
So in the
That's right.
afterlife, they're just the soul. So how can there be retribution against the soul? The soul didn't decide to do this. The body decided to do this. Well,
That's right. So it was,
although it was a body that actually committed this. So there can be
yeah,
no retribution. There can be no
that's right.
retributive justice against something, an entity that no longer exists.
That's right. And that's where, when we are in our body in each lifetime, but in this lifetime, everything that happens in this lifetime is for our own human experience
Hmm.
this time.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Yes, it
We
doesn't carry
have many
over.
discussions about that, about what's it all about, Alfie? What's the whole purpose of this? And
Yeah,
experience. Some people say learning, and
yeah,
I say, well,
yeah,
yeah, learning, but experience leads to learning. You know, that's where it
yeah, it
starts.
does.
You learn from an experience. But I think mostly you're
Yeah,
here to have
true.
experiences. But that getting a feel of the topic, what are the stages of grief?
Oh, the stages of grief. Is it Kubler-Ross, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross? She wrote down the stages of grief, but I feel like they're slightly different to, and there's no outright phase, but it will involve some or all of these things, and they might come and go at different times. It's like almost there is no linear process, but things like you can feel some people are angry. Why did this happen to me? Or angry at the person who has left a gap in their life or in their comfort zone. Um, or, they can feel let down by what happened to change their circumstances. So there can be anger, a lot of anger. For some people, there's deep, deep, deep sadness. So sadness and loss and even depression, which comes with that feeling. But the way I see depression in the grieving process is it makes one go inside, and you don't feel like interacting with other people. So it's not like you can't function. You can function, but as in you can get yourself a meal or
Mm.
keep functioning, but generally it gives you the space to back out of life to an extent and reflect. So what you might find in that phase is, if you're a particularly social person, you don't feel like going out. Or if or the opposite even can happen actually. You might be particularly not a social person, but you might be heading out to try and make the feelings disappear. So the whole grieving process is a paradox, and it's different for everyone. But sadness, depression, anger, they talk about bargaining. And I think at some point, a lot of people might go through a phase where they are talking to a higher source, which is really the point of what we talk about with grief from a new perspective. Is we know it's the gateway to wisdom. So because it's for the first time generally for a lot of people that they pray to a higher source. Help me. If I do this, can you bring my person back? Or help me through this, make it go faster. Can you get me through this? And I'll be a better person. That kind of bargaining. But I think what you see in grief is, for the first time, that people who didn't believe in anything potentially, they're so desperate because the grieving process is so harsh, that they start to talk to a higher source or hope that there is a higher source. And I suppose also, on that note, in the case of death, there's the potential that for the first time they start to realize that that person, the spirit of the person that's gone home, is accessible to them. They might start to notice signs or see them in dreams. The lights start flickering, they see butterflies, flowers blooming, whatever it might be. So the grieving process, it's pretty harsh. But the other thing that can happen is people cry uncontrollably, and that may come under the depression umbrella, but it's where there needs to be a release. There needs to be a release of this pent up, I guess, love. I guess it's love that is changed forever, one way or another, whether it's from losing your identity because you're retired, losing your identity because you realize you changed yourself in a relationship so much, or you lose someone that you very much loved and enjoyed having in your life, or just had security with them in your life, whatever it is.
What is delayed grief? I've heard that term before.
Delayed grief. Well, delayed grief would probably fall under the banner of, some people need to just get on with things. It's their inherent nature to do so. So they just get on with things. And I suppose this might happen in the form of where a parent has lost the partner, the partner's gone home in whatever way, an accident or however it happens, and there's children to take care of. And some people do have the capacity to just get on with things and almost put to side what's happened or their own grieving. So, and for some people that might come on later, and it might be many, many, many years later, that they hold this down, get on with life. But at one point or another, it will come back, or it will come around, and they will have it to experience it. And it may happen when a similar thing happens to a friend later. Or another delayed reaction that I notice happens is when someone celebrity or famous dies. That's when a lot of people start to grieve. Not everyone, of course, but some people start to grieve. And what they're actually doing is putting themselves in the position of, what if that happened to me? Or they start to think about what has happened to them, and it can set off the grieving process.
There's a lot of that going on right now with the passing of the Pope Francis. And
Yeah,
You look at the
right.
massive outpouring of grief in the Vatican City right now, with the people lined
Mm,
up. There's a
mm,
loss to people. They've lost their father in the sense because he is the father of the church of 1.2
yeah,
billion Catholics around the world. So
yeah.
massive.
That's that's timely, isn't it? That would be such a big deal for so many people, as you say.
Mm. So what's it for? What is the purpose of grief? Why do we experience this emotion?
It's a lot of emotions that are caught up in grief, but we experience it because it changes us as a person. It changes us. When we come through grief, we're different. So maybe you don't ever actually quite get over grief or potentially the loss of someone, but you certainly do start to feel differently about it. And you will feel different as a person. So some of the things that will change within you is you will have at some stage, usually when you come out of the process, you'll be more compassionate. So an example of that will be where you know, because it's happened to you, that people or some people cannot control their emotions. You know it. They cannot control if they're depressed. They can't just get over it. You know it because you've felt it yourself. So it makes you a more compassionate person. That's one thing. The other thing that it does is it's a gateway to wisdom. And the way that I see that happening is when people become potentially and usually aware at some stage in this phase, in the grieving process, that there's more to life than this. There's more to it. We're evolving as a person, or there's somewhere to go when we do go home, when we die. So that all encompasses as wisdom for an individual. And you know, the other thing that happens with loss, which causes grief, it sends people on a different trajectory. They're never the same after it. And for
Mm.
some people, they may have been heading down here and suddenly they're heading in a different direction for whatever reason, for whatever's caused the grief. So it really is a pinnacle in one's life, and it will change their perception of life, their perception of themselves. Some people are going to realize how strong they are. There's so many things, but there's a change in perception, and there's also a change in the perception of how you see life. And maybe for a lot of people, there can be this realization that there's so much more than this life.
Indeed. That's a that's a good way to look at it. A different way to look at it. So we all experience grief at one time or another in our lives. How do you suggest that we cope with grief?
I know that a lot of people want a magical cure for it, but it's such an important phase of our lives as any individual that the only way to navigate it is to go through it. So, what happens if you try and numb it? Because it's very unpleasant. If you try and numb it, even with antidepressants, for example, then you're really just delaying the process because these emotions, they have to be felt and they need an outlet. And it's not dangerous to allow your emotions out. It actually changes you for the better when the process is worked through. So going through the process is the best way to navigate it. Allow
Mm.
yourself the space to do that. And you know what? Sadly, for some people in modern society, there's limited space for them to do that in peace because they must work. They don't want to be grieving at work. But in that case, if you must soldier on, then do your grieving at night or when you get a chance to be by yourself. Don't bottle it all up. Allow yourself that space to let your emotions out.
Mm. That's good, very good advice. Now you're writing a book. I understand you're writing a book on grief at the moment. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, I can tell you a little more about it. I'm writing a book. on grief, and I want to showcase all of the different reactions to the same situation. So we'll be covering many things such as death and suicide, which of course is a death, but we'll cover things like when people become, or they maybe become paralyzed. We're going to talk about case studies for how individuals reacted and grieved to the same situation: loss of a child, infertility. There's so many things that cause grief that we'll cover. Immigrating to a new country for a better life, and yet you can get there and it's devastating because you so crave the culture that you are used to. So there's so many things that we want to cover. And of course, the paradoxes within how people react to that same situation.
Does
Yeah.
the book have a title yet? A title or a working title at least?
Unless it changes before it's published, it will be Grief is Not the Death of You. Because I think it does feel like that when you're in the process and you never know when it's going to end and you can't make it go any faster.
And
So,
what's the time
yeah.
frame? When can our viewers expect this to be published?
Ooh, I am going to say about 12 months' time.
In about 12 months' time. So we'll certainly be announcing
Yeah.
it within the group, with both of our groups, Tony's and my
Yeah.
group. You'll be well apprised of that. Well, I want to thank you, viewers, for tuning in to the Spiritual Hitchhiker's Practical Guide to the Afterlife and Beyond. But a very special thanks to Dr. Toni Reilly for being my guest today. We'll have to do it again real soon, Toni, right? We've done this
Let's
several times before.
let's do
Now
it
we will
again
do it
soon.
again pretty soon. She's probably one of my most popular guests of all the guests I've had.
Dr.
So thank
Bruce,
you.
do you think we could ask some of our viewers if they would like to ask a question?
They might have some questions, yes. And since we've
Do
got
you
an
mind if we
expert,
do that?
go ahead. No, I
Okay.
don't mind at all.
I just need to make an adjustment to our screen, and to our listeners who are here with us live, if you have a question and you could put your camera on and ask, or maybe even just your voice, I'm going to see. Okay, I've got you all on screen now. If anyone would like to ask a question, if you could unmute yourself. Tracy, I see that you've unmuted. Do you have a question?
Yes. My mum passed away in my arms 12 years ago. My husband died in his sleep 7. My dad died in my arms 6. And I had 2 dogs die in 5 years ago. And then 2 years ago, my partner was killed in a hit and run. So why, a couple of things, why is a person given so much grief? I know we've got our soul contracts, etc., but why is a person given so much? I mean, I'm not feeling sorry for myself, but all this grief that I had, it's just come one after the other, if that makes sense, as well as
Yes.
I don't understand. A week before my partner got hit and run, I actually had a dream, woke up and crying that that he was going to die, and that was a week later. So I would
Yeah.
love to know the answer to 2 questions: why that dream happened and why somebody has so much grief happen in their lifetime.
Tracy, so I'm going to speak to you from a higher perspective. It's something that I probably can't answer entirely for you, but what I have seen with people who experience a lot of death around them, it's because it's not to cause you grief. It's because you're there as a building block for those people. in some ways. So, and I guess this is something that you'll have to reflect on, or it's something also that a transcendent visit can help you understand fully. Why have you suffered so much loss? And I think probably something that you could do is feel into which of these losses caused you grief. Did they all? And if it's something to reflect upon, because sometimes you're an angel for these people because you're there in the time that they need loving or nurturing or acceptance. So maybe have a reflect on what you gave to them, and that puts a new perspective on why you've had all of these experiences in your life. The second question about why did you dream about your partner? Well, our lives are destined. Our soul at the very least knows what's going to happen in our lives. And in your case, you've been remembered a glimpse of what would happen. For what reason, I can't tell you exactly that you got an insight that it would. But again, if you reflect on, did you feel ready, more ready when it happened? Or what did that knowing in advance create in you? Did you take notice? Or
yeah,
did it
no,
make you fearful?
I asked him to come home because he was working in your neck of the woods in Queensland in the mines. And he said, I've only got a week to go. But anyway, the other thing is that old souls too, with soul contracts, each time they come down, an old soul says, well, I experienced that and I experienced that. I want this now. Maybe would that be another reason why I've experienced so much grief? I wanted to.
Well, every soul is here to do what's happening. So I think for you to truly understand why this is part of your life, this mission, then it would be really beneficial for you to do some sort of transcendent work where you can speak to your soul, whether you do that facilitated or if you do it using a guided meditation, then you will have your answers. And do you know what happens when you get those answers from your soul is it resonates with you. So I can explain to you all day long, but when you get the answer from your soul, it will make sense to you and you will most definitely feel some relief.
Great. And the
So,
other
yeah.
thank you very much. And the last thing from both of you, thank you for putting the Zoom on and everything that you've done. It helps a lot of people, and I hope that you do it again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lots of
Thank
love.
you so much.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have a question for us? If you do, you can unmute yourself, and we'll just give you a second to do that if you would like. Otherwise, I think we will be sharing this replay in Dr. Bruce's group.
Toni,
on
could you give them
Facebook,
your
on
contact?
YouTube.
Give your contact info. Yeah, it'll be shared in my group and in Dr. Toni's group and on my YouTube channel also. And why don't you give them the contact information for you? So, can you do that?
Oh, if
Or do
any
we
of
have
you
it?
are on my email list, then you will also receive a replay through the email or a link to the replay. If anyone does want to contact me, you can do that through my website, which is tonireillyinstitute.com. Yes. So
Thank you for it.
there we go. I don't see anyone unmuted. So I think if anyone wants to ask any questions, reach out. And of course, once the video or the replay goes up, you can even post your questions in the comments and we'll respond. or I'll respond.
So again,
Thank you
a
for
big
having
thank
me.
you, Dr. Toni, for being my guest tonight. And to you all out there, until next time, as always, happy hitchhiking and happy trail.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.